All right, welcome to the Retro Game Club podcast, episode 100. I am Rob, and with me is someone who also can't believe we made it to episode 100, Hugh.
Yeah, that's right. That is actually a true statement. I kind of figured life would get too busy somewhere in the past couple of years.
Yeah, well, lately we've both been pretty slammed. It's been hard to find the time.
Yeah, it's been a pretty tough couple of months. I mean, I don't talk about it on the show a lot, but I do have a kid that just moved to college, and it turns out that's like a lot more work than you expect.
Yeah.
It's probably, I mean, I guess maybe if you don't care. I keep thinking maybe I need to become like one of those Florida dads. You know, like you had friends growing up who had like the Florida dad, right?
What's a Florida dad?
You know, like you don't live in Florida, but your dad lives in Florida, and you see him like once a year.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, because he's like obligated by law or something, or by some lawyer contract, yeah.
Yeah, like this would be a lot easier.
Yeah, yeah.
But when you're actually like involved in like trying to, you know, get furniture and decorations and food, or figure out what even you're allowed to do nowadays, it's kind of a hassle. And of course, the actual move is a little bit of a pain.
Yeah, I can't imagine.
Yeah, and then paying for it. I mean, that's the other. Really, that's by far the most depressing part.
Yeah. I'm trying to think of what else. We got a lot of notes here. So yeah, we both can't believe we made it to 100, and we just wanted to thank all the listeners and just all the support we get all the time, all the emails we get, and we should probably mention this guy Zach who does just a little bit of work for us, just a tiny bit.
At least in one of the emails, I was planning to mention it. But yeah, he does a lot more work behind the scenes than I think we let on.
It's insane. Yeah, he does so much. Oh, and by the way, that intro music you heard, that was all Zach. He commissioned music from Inverse Phase and Raftronaut. And it is a rendition of our original theme song, which was originally written by my old band, I Love Lightning Bugs. So, yeah. When he presented that to us, I was speechless. I had some feelings, which I never have feelings. So, damn you, Zach, for making me feel something. But yeah, we truly appreciate Zach, your support, and all of our listeners.
Yeah, I was really surprised when he did that. So thank you very much.
But yeah, we made it to episode 100. Who knows how far we'll go? I assume we'll keep this going until. I don't know, none of us have time, or our fingers aren't good enough to play retro video games anymore or something.
Something like that, yeah. I suspect it will be something involving kids in some capacity. Probably in a good way, but usually that seems to be the thing that derails free time faster than anything else. Yeah,
and like we said in episode 0, we only plan on doing the show every other week, but... I think we get antsy after a week, and it's been almost weekly since then.
Yeah, and we're not good at keeping track of time, so.
Exactly.
Has it been a week, 2 weeks? I don't know. Actually, when is the last time we recorded? Was it a week or 2 weeks ago?
I think it was over 2 weeks ago. It has been.
I don't think it was over 2. Was it?
Because we had a cough, a throat thing run through my whole family. I'm the only one that didn't get sick, and then. You had your family stuff, and then we both had work stuff, and it's just been one thing after another.
Yeah, that could be a good derailing thing. It's like being allowed to travel for work again. I could get like sent somewhere for a few months.
Ew, that does not sound good.
Yeah, hopefully not. Well, it depends where you get sent.
True. yeah. But do you have any favorite episode moments? Anything like that?
We started talking about this like. You'd mentioned not feeling anything, and I'm sort of in that place, too. I don't feel like a lot of highs and lows, but I really liked doing the Hard for Games episode, and if I remember correctly, it was towards the start of this whole COVID thing, because I remember I sent them some tapes, and the whole, like, you know, protocol of, like, getting the tapes back, I promise I won't cough on them kind of conversation we had, you know. Not that I don't think COVID can survive 2 weeks in a cardboard box. But because we did that like at the start of the pandemic, I was kind of hopeful that it would introduce people to a lot of videos they could watch now that they had more downtime.
Yeah, that good memory on that, because when we first emailed them, they only live about 20 minutes from my house, and And I even frequent one of the stores one of them works at. And great guys. Anyone should check out Hard for Games on YouTube. But anyway, they were just going to come over at first, and like we'd record the episode, play some arcade games, stuff like that. But then COVID hit, so even though they live 20 minutes away, that was definitely a Google Meet interview.
Yeah, and then I put one right here. Oh yeah, I like the episodes we've done that kind of focus on one game series. Although at this point, I think we only have like a couple of those left. A couple ideas at least. Yeah,
because we always decided if we can't speak intelligently about it, we probably shouldn't. I don't know why we decided that on just that one topic, because it's not like we do that with anything else.
Yeah, that's true. What about you? Got a few things here. It looks like.
I really liked that Arabian Prince interview from NWA. If any of our listeners haven't listened to that one, I really think you should. Just his stories about bringing his Commodore Amiga on the road while being in NWA and touring, and just talking about that. I think there was like a little riot in Detroit, something like that, something with some uprising in Detroit because of NWA, and he was I think in the back of the tour bus programming games on his Amiga during the time. So just really cool.
Well, yeah, the part of that interview I remember best was, I think he mentioned like his first paycheck, he took it directly to the computer store and bought like one of each model they had.
That's amazing. Yeah. David Craddock was a great one. Obviously, Burger Becky both times, even though only one got on our podcast. And Dan Hess, who did all the music for Pilot Wing 64. Just a fun guy to talk to. And I think my favorite episodes, Hugh, were the ones where you taught me something about programming or assembly and stuff like that.
Oh, that's too bad, because I have this like article that I started sometime during the pandemic that then I gave up on because it was starting to hurt my brain. Maybe I'll revive that one then.
Nice.
I was doing this article where I was trying to figure out how to create a... This is stupid. Okay, this is... you can go ahead and call this a dumb project. I was trying to... are you familiar with Mortal Kombat 2, the arcade game?
Yes, I've heard of it.
Okay. There's a character in there called Sub-Zero. And on the Sega Genesis, one of his special moves is different than the arcade. Like the buttons you press are different.
Okay.
And I was trying to figure out how to engineer a patch to make the Sega Genesis version work like the arcade, which you need a 6-button controller for. Part of it is like what it looks like when I like disassembled the code. It looked like what they did was try to compromise for people with 3-button controllers so that they didn't have to have different moves for 3-button and 6-button controllers. Does that make sense?
Okay. Yeah.
But then when I looked at how they disassembled it, it would be, I think, easy to, because there's part of the code where they are mapping the button presses to actual game buttons. So I think you could probably do that. It would be tricky, but I think you can do it. Where I got stuck on was like how the code to detect if you're, like, basically the code to look up if you've performed a special move in the, not even in that frame, because it seems to store like 5 frames of moves. This is why I gave up. Like, I was going into it and it's like, okay, well, there's one queue where it's like buttons you've pressed sometime in the last 5 frames, and this other queue that's like buttons you've held over the past 5 frames, but like the D-pad buttons are in one queue and the A, B, C, X, Y buttons are in a different queue. And I was just like, so wait, so you have to match up each frame, the button presses to and I was like, I give up. I actually spent a number of hours trying to deconstruct what they're doing before I was like, wow, I don't know how they came up with this scheme, but it is it's very complicated for a problem that seems simple, but those guys are better programmers than me, so they probably did the most optimal way.
Yeah, that's crazy. I think that sounds like a cool project. It could be called like the 6-button controller patch or something. Yeah,
that's literally what I was going to do. And then I looked at like how like the Sega CD and other in 32X versions did it. It was a lot of fun until I went insane and quit.
Yeah, I don't blame you. I do not blame you at all. We have another quick dumb segment here called Rob's Predictions.
Oh, yeah.
Let's power through these. So These are just things I've said over the past, it's been like almost 4 years now. Let's see if they were right or wrong. So, prediction number 1, because Star Wars is Disney and 1UP released a Star Wars cab, Tron would definitely be released next.
No.
No Tron cab from 1UP yet. Because the company that has the holding rights of Atari was releasing a console, and that company did not seem legit, KFC would probably release their console first. True.
Can you buy the KFC console?
Well, you could buy it back then. I don't know if you
Okay.
still can buy it. And you could heat your chicken in it as well. The Amico would take off where the Wii left off, to be determined, but it's not looking very good at all. Zelda's 25th anniversary would be as big as Mario's 35th anniversary, and it would start right after Mario's 35th anniversary was over. No. Mario's
No,
was
they
much
did release
bigger.
they are doing the Game & Watch. But
And
that's
then,
about it.
yeah, and then the Skyward Sword HD, but yeah,
Yeah.
that's it. If I buy, and then you fill in the blank of anything, I'll totally use it. Unlike these other things I bought that are in a drawer.
We're going to use, yeah.
I have boxes of Raspberry Pis, an unfinished Mister, which is a story for the next episode, and a handful of other gadgets. So that's another false one. And here's one that I've said that there's no way to know yet, but I just wanted to remind everyone that I said this first. The Switch successor, so the actual successor, if it's a Switch, whatever, it probably wouldn't be called a Switch at this point. It'll be a reverse Switch, so it'll be a gadget that you plug into your TV, kind of like a Google Chromecast, and so you're pretty much always holding the console, which is also the controller. So that's my prediction. So to be determined on that one. Not a good track record.
No. I don't think it. I have no thoughts on what the next Switch will be, or the next Nintendo console.
Yeah. They're always good at surprising us. Well, want to dive into our Ask Us Anything?
Yeah. Let's do that.
So my first one, you and I started this out because we had no idea if we were actually going to get any questions.
Yeah, we did. We actually got a lot of questions.
Tons of questions. So my question for you is, what was your favorite Game Club game so far? And did anything surprise you that you actually liked?
Yeah, I mean, my favorite is going to be like either Super Metroid or Link to the Past. Just because those are two of my favorite games ever. But so the most surprising game is probably Shadow of the Ninja. I'd always sort of thought of it as being kind of like a low budget third-party game. There were obviously a lot of those on the NES. And then when I played it, I'm like, yeah, this is actually a pretty solid game. I'm a little bit surprised it didn't do better.
In many ways, it's better than Ninja Gaiden.
I
so.
like it more. I enjoy playing it more than I enjoy playing Ninja Gaiden.
Mm-hmm.
So that was a good pick. Yeah. What did I put for? Oh, Rob, what is the dream arcade cabinet you'd like to own?
I would have to go, and I hope 1UP Arcade is listening to this. I would have to go with 720 or Stun Runner. Both I would like to have, obviously the original arcade, but those two seem like they'd be really hard to maintain. The controls for them are really expensive that they break, so 1UP Arcade seems like a good fit for these. But I would love, if anyone has got these working in MAME with like an Xbox controller or something, let me know how you did that, what your settings are, because I'd really like to know. Maybe we'll make these a Game Club game. I just haven't because it'd be so hard to play, you know what I mean? But if we have some tips, maybe we can make that a bit easier.
Yeah, so 720 is never a game I really got into. I think I have it here on one of these Midway arcade collections. So I guess we picked it. I could play it. I guess I never really understood what you're supposed to be doing in 720.
Just getting gold at the parks and not getting eaten by bees.
Okay.
That's it. Zach wrote us, how did we end up making this podcast together?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. So, I'm sure some of our listeners know I did a podcast before this. It kind of disintegrated out of nowhere. And I was sort of debating doing another podcast, and I'd sort of written down two ideas that I would actually seriously consider doing. One of them was I call it the 32X Game by Game podcast, which I'm convinced I would regret doing after like 5 episodes. And then I was working on another one. I think I called it like the American Falcom Experience or something. But it amounted to like a Falcom game by game podcast, at least things that were released in the US. And as I started looking around, I find that, I don't know, people that are really into that developer, into Falcom games, most of them got into Falcom during the early zeros when the Trails RPG series became a little bit popular. Popular relative to their other games. And most of them are not really interested in looking at the back catalog. And then kind of out of the blue, Rob, right, you contacted me about this idea. And I sort of figured, with the Game Club format, I could talk about games from, 32X or Falcom and not get, like, burned out on talking about them all the time. So,
Yeah.
I thought that would work. And then I also, I don't know, I kind of like, I like the weird hardware and homebrew projects. I mean, I may joke about how useless some of the projects we talk about are, but I'm still very impressed by them.
Yeah. That was one of the first ideas I had that I came to you with. Is like, there's so much going on in emulation and hardware that no one is talking about. And the original idea was every single episode we'll have a project and a topic that we'll really dive into. But our lives are a little bit too chaotic for that part.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, eventually we'll end up covering a story like, Doom running on 7-Eleven hot dog roller, right? Like when I see those, I'm like, yeah, that's useless, but it's fun.
Yeah. Someone spent a lot of time getting that to work. Rick writes in and he asks, what do you feel is your most personally treasured game piece in your collection, whether it's a game, a console, emulation, arcade, pinball, anything? And then he asks, have you guys ever considered streaming your podcast on Twitch or YouTube?
Maybe. We should just questions. He sent 3 questions. We should just do them in order.
Okay. So let's start with the first one.
Most personally treasured piece in your collection.
Well, yeah, mine is the Star Wars cab or the Tron cab.
Yeah,
definitely.
I had a hard time with this because I own a couple of really rare things, but I also never use them. So I thought about, like, if I had to downsize out of nowhere, the things I would probably keep are like my series specific collections. Like I have pretty much every Zelda game and Zelda thing you can think of. I mentioned Falcom. I've got basically every variant of every Ys game and most variants of Doom 1 and 2 and most versions of Mortal Kombat 1 and 2. And I would probably hang on to those and, I could pretty much get rid of almost anything else if I had to. I mean, ultimately, I could get rid of anything if I had to, but, if I had to prioritize, those would be the things I'd probably hang on to.
Yeah. That's cool. Yeah.
Because it's things I'd actually, like, play, if that makes sense.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, we do this for nostalgia and fun, and a lot of things we buy just end up on a shelf or in my case, in a box, and it's just...
Yeah, like the CDI might be the CDI or the Game.com are probably maybe the 2 rarest systems I own, and I would gladly throw those into a garbage fire.
It's funny. And what, have you ever considered putting this on Twitch or YouTube?
No, because I don't own a hot tub. That's the only barrier.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, I wonder if anyone on Twitch has been electrocuted by trying to get their laptop in a hot tub or something.
I don't think that's powerful enough. I think I think most electronics short out before you would actually be killed. I mean,
one girl did die from an iPhone, but it was plugged into the wall, and I'm sure there's something else going on there too.
Like I gave myself a pretty good shock about a week ago, working on something that I forgot to unplug.
I've done that.
Not one of my brighter moments. at no point did I feel like I was going to die. Now I realize there's enough electricity coming through your outlet to kill you, because it does happen. But most electronics, modern things, have a way of, I'm going to use the term shorting out. That's probably not accurate. I think it's probably pretty hard to do.
You have the breakers, yeah. And then I just don't like being on camera. Yeah. I don't think our listeners, this is part of a different question, so I won't dive into this, but I don't think our listeners realize how much work I put into editing.
Yeah. So I was going to say that too. Like we've never had an episode that was actually like clean recording.
Yeah. Yeah. Especially the first 4 months. When we first started this podcast, I contacted you in January.
Yeah.
And I don't think we started recording until April-ish. And it's because I had this really bad cough that was really lingering. And man, editing those first few episodes was rough. It was just all coughing. But anyway, Rick's last question is, do you have any favorite handhelds, legit systems, or emulation systems?
All right. I actually put down the PlayStation Portable, and it's kind of a very long answer. Some of it is the game library. Like it has I think, an extremely underrated game library. It's a lot of like PS2 greatest hits, or sort of, sequels to PlayStation 2 games that are only on PSP. It has a lot of good Ys games. I think it has 4 Ys games total. Has a very underrated Final Fantasy game. And I actually like using it for a UMD player. Like, the movie selection on there is really good. It's a lot of like 90s and early Zeros classics. You don't need to be, if you're going to be on an airplane, you don't have to pay the $9 Wi-Fi to watch, Office Space or whatever. So I'm actually a real big fan of the PSP, and about once a year I usually do go back and play something from my PSP back catalog. I still have like a good 8 or 9 PSP games I haven't started yet.
That's cool.
Yeah, well, they're really cheap. Like, when you find PSP games, they're $1, right? So I have a pretty good backlog still to get through.
Yeah, that is just a great system. I think that's why I love the Vita too, because most of my PSP games were digital. Mm-hmm. Digital. I mean, all games are digital, but yeah, download, not physical. And so I could play them all on the Vita, and then hack my Vita for RetroArch. But I really like the 3DS too. I just love the library. Mm-hmm. I don't love the cramps it gets in my hands, but it is just I think I don't know if it's underrated anymore. I think people realize that the 3DS was a great system.
Well, I mean, the DS family, I think, is still like the highest selling game system ever.
Yeah. Just insane, the catalog.
Yeah. Yeah, it's got stuff for all ages too.
Unlike PSP, not cheap games. Some DS games are pretty pricey.
Yeah, PSP, there's a couple, like, if you want to get like the Lunar remake, so that's an RPG, that's going to cost you $100, right? Mm-hmm. But most of the time, you're finding PSP games for $1 or $2.
Mm-hmm. That's cool. Yeah.
So let's see. Jason writes in. So thank you, Rick. Jason writes in. A question I had is, how do you both stay focused on the hobby to put out episodes so consistently? Do you have other hobbies? Are you busy with work and family? As much as I, meaning Jason, enjoys retro games, he tends to focus on it for a few months, and then, something else comes and takes over his time.
Yeah, I mean, like I said before, it takes about 2 to 3 hours to read all the news and emails, and then record the episode. And it takes about 2 hours to mix and publish the episode. So that's about 5 hours a week where I could be gaming. But some weeks where it's just too crazy, I really keep it simple, meaning I'll pick a simple game. So usually if I pick a simple game, my life is a bit hectic, but this podcast actually kind of keeps me focused on that passion, makes me realize, if it wasn't for this podcast, I might be working. I don't get overtime, so I might be working instead of playing games and enjoying myself and relaxing. And my kids are starting to get into video games too, so introducing them to the classics has really helped as well. But yeah, how about you?
So kind of like we said at the beginning of the show, Zach actually does more prep than we probably give him credit for, because a lot of the news articles and some of the comments on the news articles are from him. which helps a lot because sometimes I don't have to read an article if I see that he made a comment about the article. I'm like, okay, well, I know, I don't, I know what to look for. My kids, they're both teenagers. I just mentioned at the top of the show, right? I have a kid who's in college now. Other than the actual move, I don't really have to do a lot of supervising there. And my youngest kid is technically a teenager now too, and she's in that kind of phase where you have to like try to get her to do something with you. So they're kind of low maintenance. Relatively speaking, right? Kids are still a lot of work regardless, but that's a big factor. And the reality is like the kind of articles and stuff we talk about are things I'm going to be reading during the week anyways. Like I don't play golf. I don't I don't go to the Lions Club. What is the Lions Club? I don't even know what it is.
There's one by my house. I have no idea what it is.
Yeah. I had some friends join a moose lodge, but I don't know why they did that.
I don't know. Isn't that a Fred Flintstone thing? Isn't that what he was part of?
No, it's a real thing. And I think they did it because there's like, if you join one moose lodge, then you can go to any moose lodge in the country. And I guess they have like $2 beer or something. I don't know what the story was other than when they travel, they like to go to the local moose lodge. I was associated with like old guys, but I guess that's us now. So
true. Yeah. He also did ask if we had any other hobbies, and yeah, mine would be just video games, programming. And I really like riding my mountain bike. I really, really like riding my mountain bike.
Yeah. Yeah. I have no other hobbies really. I don't watch a lot of TV really. And, I kind of got burned out on like going to movies and stuff a long time ago. Like this is why I'm not trying to be like a hipster or something when I joke about not knowing what the Marvel or Avengers movies are. Like I literally haven't gone to the theater to see anything except for the latest Star Wars films, and I deeply regret doing that.
Yes. Yeah. Right. Yeah. Unlike you, I do consume a lot of media, a lot of streaming channels and Twitch and stuff like that.
Yeah. I like the channel that shows old game shows from the 80s. Let's see. Nate, who we've had on the show, he made the game Doodle World. Great game. He says, what game that would be considered a horrible game or generally disliked by most gamers is something that you enjoy playing, and why do you enjoy it?
I'm going to go with the King's Quest series, and really, any of the Sierra Online. A lot of people just don't like those games because they think there's a lot of cheap deaths and you don't know what to do. But, you got to kind of put yourself back in that time where, games are expensive and, people were only buying one or two games with their computers, so they had to make them last. And Legendary Wings is probably my favorite game of all time, and a lot of people don't care about that game at all. And Rescue on the NES, even though you could beat it in 10 minutes, I just think it's a fantastic game. Most people just think it's boring. How about you?
So I was going to say real quick, Rescue is a game that tricked me because it was published in the US by Kemco, right? Who had done like Shadowgate and Deja Vu and what's the other one? Uninvited. Thank you. Which of course were, right? Rescue, I think, was developed by a different company, and they just licensed it and ported it. So I was expecting a completely different game.
I like it.
Yeah.
I think it's fun.
I'll have to go try it again. So for me, I would say 16-bit FMV games in general. I think it's a genre that people really, rag on, but I enjoy a lot of them. So like, I worked on a couple of games I like a lot. Like It Came from the Desert, Night Trap, and Sherlock Holmes. I think those are all great games. Now, part of it is I like campy old horror films, like late night UHF TV station horror films. So that's part of it. Like these just have the aesthetic of something you would see on like channel 60 at 11 o'clock on a Saturday.
Yeah.
And in general, 16-bit FMV games, I mean, they're limited by the quality, but they did tend to gravitate towards sort of horror mystery themes. So,
yeah.
Really, really like that. I really like those games. And I don't know a whole lot of people that are fans of 16-bit full motion video games.
Yeah, that's definitely a niche thing. And I think a lot of people think they would like them, and then you start playing them, and they're not for everybody. Super Retro 64 writes in, what game cancellation was the most disappointing? This can include games that you didn't hear about until years later.
So, if we talk about games with unfinished localizations, if we're going to count that, right?
We are.
So these are games that were released but not localized. I'll start with that. So Final Fantasy V for Super Nintendo was certainly a big one. I think that would have done really well. I think it's much better than Final Fantasy IV. It's, I think, the second best in the old pixel style Final Fantasy series. And then Trails in the Sky the Third, which I know you never heard of, for PSP. That was released on Steam. The PSP version never got released, partially because it took so long to localize that the PSP was dead in the US by the time the localization was done. As for things that flat out were not ever released or were canceled, Akira for Sega Genesis, I thought, if you've seen any of the footage of that or pictures of it, it looks like a pretty amazing game. And then one that, it's kind of a weird one, but the Phantasy Star RPG series, when the Sega CD was first announced, they, in some articles, had mentioned doing Phantasy Star remakes with, Red Book Audio.
That would have made so much money.
I assume it would have, yes. It sounds like a great idea, but it never happened. So I'm still disappointed by that. I guess Sega doesn't really seem to sue ROM hackers, so I guess you could make that hack yourself now.
Yeah. That Akira for Sega Genesis, that's a great pick. Yeah. I didn't learn about that until we were doing this episode.
Yeah.
Until we were doing this podcast.
Yeah.
My picks are East 4 for the TurboGrafx 16. I was the kid in my high school that had a TurboGrafx 16, and I loved East 1, 2, and 3. I am not lying. I think East 3 is a good game, and East 4 would have been great to have back then. I've played it, translated since recently, but yeah. I have no proof that it was actually going to be released in the U.S., but let's just pretend like it was gonna.
I think there was I would say at no time did Hudson ever think about releasing it in the U.S.
You're probably right. And then Mario 128. There was some footage when they announced the GameCube, or really teased the GameCube, that Mario 128 was going to be a thing. Shigeru Miyamoto has spoken about it before, and I just would have liked to seen, what that was. Instead, we got, what did we get? We got Pikmin and Mario Sunshine, I think is what it splintered off into, two different directions. And I would have loved to see what he actually did with that. What do we got?
All right, so thank you for that email. Warren, who I don't remember, he's probably emailed before. We have a lot of new emailers. In this,
I love it.
Nice. Yeah, and I'm trying to mentally. If you emailed us 20 episodes ago, or even 5, I don't remember it. So he says he played Ninja Spirit on the TurboGrafx 16 once when he was a kid and remembered liking it. And just played it again recently. He got to the last boss with lots of help from save states, but even then could not beat it. So he went on YouTube to see if there was some sort of trick and discovered there were 3 weapon options other than the sword. And he had only used the sword up to that point. And he says, have you guys ever made a game way more difficult than it needed to be because of your own stupidity or ignorance?
So, thank you for that question. I love it because Ninja Spirit is, again, one of my all-time favorite games. I adore that game. And it will be, I don't think it's been a Game Club game yet. If not, it will be. But that game is all about the bombs, and there's a new speed run where you go through the game 3 times with all 3 weapons. I actually didn't figure out how to play the Final Fantasy remake until the last battle. And it finally clicked during the last boss. It finally clicked how I should be playing that game. And it was, anyone else who played it like me would probably think I was actually a really good player. Like I was trying to not do certain things to make the game harder. But yeah, that tower took me forever because of that.
See, I just put the game onto easy mode and then powered through.
It's probably a good idea.
Said, I don't know if I get this battle system. It's better than the Final Fantasy 15 battle system, but I still don't know if I get it.
I did not understand Final Fantasy 15's battle system at all. I bounced off that game pretty hard.
Yeah, it's just hold the attack button and eventually you win the fight. There's some way to make magic, but it's really weird. First question I said, a long time ago, I played E6, which was on PlayStation 2. And I go into the last dungeon, and at some point in the last dungeon, it warns you, like, once you cross this door, you can never leave. Like, you can't go back to town. And I did that without doing the last weapon upgrade. So throughout the game, you collect materials, you can upgrade your weapons. And I skipped the last weapon upgrade. I don't know why I did that, but I was way into the last dungeon, which, again, you cannot leave. And then you get to the second to last boss, and you like literally can't damage them if you don't have the maximum weapon upgrades.
Yep.
So I had to go back.
I did the same thing.
Yeah. Had to go back like 4 hours to an old save game. And the other thing is, when first time I played Secret of Mana was in the 90s. And I didn't realize you had to level up magic. You know, by the way Secret of Mana works is by using a weapon or using magic, you level them up. So I got to some point in the game where I was just stuck. Like, my magic was so weak, my only option would be, like, going back and just grinding for, like, hours and hours on end. So then, during the last quarantine, I played it on the Super Nintendo Classic, and made a point to sort of balance, alternate between using weapons and magic, so that they both kind of leveled up at the same rate. And the game was a whole lot easier then. It's actually a pretty easy game if you play it how it's intended to be played.
Nice. Thank you for that email, Warren. Eric from the Pacific Northwest writes in.
We should do these questions in order too, right?
What's it?
He has multiple questions. So we should do them in order.
We'll do the first one here. As a kid or young adult, did you ever get super hyped about a game, read reviews, buy a full price on day one to realize it was junk? For me, it was, for me, meaning Eric, it was Star Wars Episode 1 Phantom Menace for the PC. The game came out in 99 and required to get a dedicated GPU, so he got the Monster 2 with 4 megabytes. And he was super hyped about the game. He had just seen the movie. The in-game menu animations were great, but the game itself was not great. What would you say would be yours?
I put Spelunker on the NES because it looked like it was going to be a Metroid game. Everything I saw made it look like it was Metroid. It was not Metroid, and I, to this day, am angry about it.
Nice. For me, the Addams Family and TurboGrafx 16 CD, I do not like that game at all. But even to this day, when I see other video of it, other people playing it, it looks fun to me. But whenever I play it, I have the opposite of fun. I'm the opposite of happy when I'm playing that game.
Yeah. The jump controls are so terrible in that game.
Oh, man, it's so bad. And I love the Addams Family. I love the TurboGrafx 16 CD. I should love that. But, Resident Evil. So I had an idea in the beginning of this summer, late spring, early summer this year, that I was going to try to beat all the Resident Evil games by Halloween, at least a large majority of them. And I got the first Resident Evil remake, I think, on the Switch. Is that what it's on? Anyway, I did not enjoy that game. I don't think I understood it. I tried it twice and I just bounced off it. And everyone just adores this series. And again, I like horror flicks and I like zombies. You'd think this game would be right up my alley, but not so much. His next question is best thrift store or yard sale finds in the best 5 years. He found PC Commodore stuff at an estate sale, a few other, and he has a few others that were pretty good, but in 2019, a yard sale, he snagged PS or a Vita TV, whichever one you call it, a PS1 with an LCD screen, a Vita 2000, and some PS1 RPGs, all for $100. Wow, that's really good. In the same year, he found a Mario trunk for $5 at a yard sale. So he sent us a picture of this trunk, and yeah, it's a white Mario and Zelda trunk that you would store stuff in, and it looks really well made. I've never seen this before in my life.
I think this is in one of the catalog scans I posted.
Okay, wow. Yeah, this
I'm
thing's
pretty
cool.
sure this is in like one of the Sears catalogs I posted. It looks really, really familiar.
For $5, it's an amazing price.
Oh yeah, yeah. You just need you got to get some like magic erase wipes on it, and it'll be good to go.
I'll answer first because my answer is like I never really get to any of these things, so I've never really found a great deal other than I went to a Star Wars auction in beautiful Flint, Michigan, and I got some great deals on some Star Wars stuff there, but I don't think auctions count.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, the problem is he limits this question to the past 5 years, which is, I mean, one of those years is 2020, where there's not much, definitely no yard sales. I think I saw one yard sale in 2020. They did have video games, but it was like Atari Flashback. So in 2018, I found a Pac-Man motion lamp that I guess is pretty rare. I've never found a listing on eBay. And Midwest Gaming Classic, I asked a guy who was selling nothing but Pac-Man merchandise about it, and he had not even heard of it. So I don't know what it's worth, but it was at an estate sale, so whatever. 2017, I picked up a bunch of Game Gear and GameCube stuff for $20, and I'm calling this noteworthy because I'd like just got in the car with my kid, and who I was dragging with to look at some yard sales. And I said, it'd be really great. I really would like to find one of those like GameCube mini monitors. You know, like the thing that snaps onto the GameCube, so you can set the GameCube on your desk and play games on the mini screen. I think that's what Eric's talking about too, is PS1 with LCD screen.
Yeah, they had one of those. Yeah.
And by complete coincidence, first garage sale we stopped at had one in this lot of
awesome.
This box of stuff that I basically just said, I'll give you like $20 for all the video game stuff you have here. I didn't even look through it. And then in 2019, I got a boxed Microvision at a estate sale, which I found Microvision stuff at estate sales twice. One time it was games, but no system. And this time it was the system, which is good because it's a very, very rare system. And they're just stacked in with board games. I don't know why people think Microvision is a board game. But it's usually just in a stack of board games for like $2 when you find them.
Weird, yeah.
Yeah, well, that's how I got. Like, I got the CDI the same way, right? Like, that was literally in a thrift store wedged between a pile of other CD players for $5.
That's so awesome. I could definitely see someone making that mistake. But he goes off to want to read some of his other questions here?
Yeah, I'll get that. He said, I was just thinking about summer gaming memories. Did you guys hide out in basements with AC and slog through the 3 or 4 games you owned? And he just mentions that he played a lot of Baldur's Gate in the 90s during summer break. So
and Hexen and Doom.
Yeah, and he had to in Hexen and Doom. So, do you do a lot of basement gaming in summer?
Oh, yeah, and because it's the coolest place in the house. And yeah, it was an unfinished basement, and I just had, the TV on a little stand down there with my NES. That's how I beat Blaster Master and Fester's Quest. Okay. And we lived with an open area behind our house, so I was lucky to be able to run around and catch frogs and crayfish and stuff like that in a creek back there. So I'd get all dirty and then come home for lunch and cool down and play some games. And then after dinner, also, it was like games until bedtime,
Yeah.
How about you?
I've never had a house with a finished basement. We moved around a lot. Again, my father was in the Army, and the first house we even had that had a basement was really just used as a storage room for stuff that we hadn't unboxed for 2 to 3 moves. And then both my parents worked, and during summer break, it was kind of just me and my sister in the house, and we weren't allowed to turn on the AC when it was just the 2 of us.
That's nuts.
Well, I don't know. Maybe AC was expensive. Maybe my parents wanted us to build character. I don't know. So I played a lot of in Intellivision and later NES while sitting next to one of those giant metal box fans. You know what I'm talking about? Huge.
Yeah.
Metal box fan.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I played a lot of video games sitting next to one of those. So this is probably why my hearing is so terrible today.
That makes sense, yeah. And then he also asks, have you ever met any movie, TV, gaming, or internet celebrities? He met Will Wheaton at Emerald City Comic-Con Says he's a really nice guy. Let's see, he met Warren Spector of Deus Ex and interviewed him about Epic Mickey and a few others there. So he met Metal Jesus too. So yeah, have you met any celebs, big or small?
No, I mean, part of it is that, like, yes and no. Like, I won't go up and talk to celebrities if I run into one. It would be pretty hard for me to imagine doing that, you know. Maybe if I saw, like, Shigeru Miyamoto, but he doesn't really speak English, so that won't work very well. What's funny is I've worked at, like, 2 different offices that were located very close to a building called the Berto Center, which I know you don't know what that is because you're not from Chicago. But it's in the suburbs, and it's the practice facility for, like, the Chicago Bulls and, WNBA Sky Team. And visiting teams use it as a practice facility, too. So it was really not uncommon to just run into random NBA players, like, at Starbucks in that area.
Nice.
I mean, just all the time. Like, you would, if you've lived in, like, the north suburbs, at some point you have a story of, like, Michael Jordan driving past you at, like, 112 miles an hour. Because he had some sort of sports car with, MJ23 as the license plate.
Nice.
And he would never get pulled over. That doesn't really count, though. One video game store I worked at, NBA player Glenn Robinson was a regular customer. So
nice.
Yeah. And I think he kept coming to our store because we didn't really care. Like, no one ever bugged him about, like, autographs.
That's how you gotta be. Yeah.
A weird one that's a very long story I'd have to say for an off-topic podcast is why member of 85 Bears Dan Hampton was invited to my wedding. That's actually quite a long story. But I put a couple notes here. Pre-famous CM Punk. Yeah, because I used to go to a lot of, like, small, like, community college gym wrestling shows. And CM Punk was a guy we heckled very, very heavily. And then you'd run into him in, like, the parking lot and, clown around. Like, the wrestlers at these small shows, I think, prefer to have a crowd that's into it than people just sitting on their hands.
Yeah.
So there's that. In terms of gaming celebrities, I bet Keith Robinson of television fame, and most of the Mortal Kombat 1 and 2 actors. And then through my wife, I've met a lot of, like, very high-selling, like, popular romance authors, but I don't know if any of our listeners would know who they are if I started naming them.
Yeah, I definitely wouldn't. I don't know that genre at all.
Yeah. And then the last one here is my wife actually she was a theater major in college, and 2 people she did a lot of theater with who I went to a lot of, like, college theater parties with, ended up having, like, real, like, successful careers. Like, they're
cool.
they're like one of them is a celebrity you would actually recognize, but I'm not gonna name drop. It's like someone you would actually be like, oh, I know who that is. I've seen them on this TV show. They were lead on some TV show that was moderately popular. And the other one is a writer, and I'm not going to say what show he writes, but it's a very popular one.
Cool. I also met Will Wheaton at a comic book store once, and I write a comic book, and so I do Comic-Con every year, other than last year and this year. And so I always meet a lot of celebrities at those. You have weird encounters, like, I held the door open and talked to for a minute for Mickey from the Monkees, that kind of thing. But before I hop back to my IT career, I was a music producer engineer. And so I worked with just so many famous people, like Aretha Franklin, Elliott Smith, Mark Farner, Ben Folds, Soul Coughing. I could go on and on name dropping, but it's really draining. Most of those people are cool. It's usually their entourages that are not fun to be around. So I got back into IT. But yeah. Eric, thank you for all those questions. And let's see, Robert writes in, when he learned he was going to make another podcast, it ended up being this one, and he was delighted. Thank you both for doing the podcast. Well, thank you, Robert. Hugh, do you care to discuss the book you wrote and where it could be read? I enjoyed it, and it was like you were reading it to me in my head, since I'm so familiar with your voice.
That's great.
That sounded way less creepy than he meant it to be.
Yeah,
he said that, not me.
I understand
But
that, yes,
he asked, how did we two meet and decide to do the podcast? We answered most of that, but yeah, go on.
Well, yeah, no, so a long time ago, I wrote an article on our website called I called it My Loser Phase, Reflections on Video Game Retail from 1992 to 1997. Kind of a long title. And the article got a lot of views, like a lot of views. So this was around the time like Kindle was new, and most of the Kindles didn't have like a web browser. So I said, oh, I'll just take this article, I'm going to add a little extra content, and I will just throw it on the Kindle store for like whatever the lowest price is they will let me set. Which at the time was 99 cents, which I still think is a ripoff, since I literally give the same thing away for free on my website.
Yeah.
Although if you have like Kindle Unlimited, I guess it is free. It's right, because I'm in that program, so you can just read it for free if you have the Kindle Unlimited. There's really not that much extra content, but yeah, it was just a long article about video game store experiences during that 5-year period, which was it was a fun time because you had a lot of console launches, you had 16-bit wars, and yeah, it was mostly me just reacting to like, wow, a lot of people are reading this thing. I should make it available on other formats. I believe at this point, I don't get money for it, which makes sense because it's in the unlimited program, and I think you basically get no money from that. But like when I first put it out, I got like, I don't know, $140, something like that.
What's it called again? If the listeners want to look for it,
just look for My Loser Phase. It's kind of the fastest way to find it. And yeah, you can read the free version on my website though. I don't have ads either way. Whether you buy it from Amazon or you read it on my site, I don't get any money. So just pick either one. I don't care.
But then he also asked, how did we meet and decide to do this podcast? We answered part of that before, but, I was a regular emailer of Hugh's old podcast. I was the majors of your old podcast, you could say.
You could say that.
Yeah. And so, and I used to really enjoy when Hughes brought up programming type stuff. So I figured like, hey, I'm a programmer too. We could really connect on a lot of this stuff. And this podcast ended up not being as programming and emulation focused as I thought it would be. But hey, we may have different phases, different evolutions of the podcast. And then my sister doesn't live far from Hughes, so a few summers ago we met up at a bar. I remember it was a torrential downpour, and we were the only people in this really hip bar.
Yeah.
And I think I drank 6 beers in 2 hours. I had to Uber home.
Yeah, it was a microbrewery actually. It was Only Child Brewing, which is a very small microbrewery that has.
It was good.
Room. Yeah, I'm a big fan of the place. Matter of fact, their Oktoberfest came out recently, and I've been putting off picking it up because I don't want it to sit in my trunk. It's because so hot. I mean, I don't know about you, but it is like 98 degrees every day here right now. So I'm going to be heading over there soon.
Nice.
It's my free plug for them. So thank you for that email, Robert. Corey, and then later on, the last email we got. So this is not our last email. We still have a few more to go here. But the last one we got was from Jonathan. And previous to Jonathan, someone, Corey, asked us the exact same question. So I don't believe they're related. So this is answering 2 emails with a question, and it is, if you could work for any game developer at any time period, which one would you pick and why? And Jonathan's is a little bit different because he's asking about if you could be a developer for one retro console or company. But I'm declaring these to be the same question.
All right. I'll answer it quickly. I would just kill to work at a video game company. I know, there's horror stories of crunch and stuff like that, but still, I would just love to be in the business. So if there's any video game companies looking for some developers, let me know. But shockingly, I would probably choose Insomniac present day. I just love what they're doing. I love what they've been doing ever since PS2, and they're known for not being a crunch type company and treating their employees well, and they're just so creative, and it just seems fun to work there. But I do, one of my regrets is not, as a youngster, not really focusing on video game development and just focusing more on boring type programming. So there you go. How about you?
Like early Atari sounds like super fun, but also kind of incredibly insane. Like in my early 20s, I probably would not have known what I was getting into, but I think at that point in life, I would have fit in really well there. Like I could definitely see much younger me trying to like reverse engineer some arcade game that really shouldn't be on the 2600 and basically working like 18 hours a day trying to figure this out. Until of course I burn out and just become like a, park ranger in Alaska or something. But later on, like at some point I had a very small appearance in the Street Fighter the movie arcade game. And when I went to the office where the game was being developed, right? I noticed that like all the developers had cots in their offices. And later on I said, you know what? I don't think this is the job for me. So when I finished my CS degree, no, I didn't really apply anywhere. And I have quit a job in the past over excessive crunch and, the expectation that you work for them 24 hours a day, right? I mean, literally, I've quit a job over that. So I would probably not work for a game company unless it operated more like a real company.
Yeah. And Will writes in, how would you pair? These are strange, but probably one of the best questions of the episode. How would you pair each entry of the Mega Man NES hexaology to an album of one of your favorite bands? So, as an example, he uses Pink Floyd. For Mega Man 1, it would be Dark Side. Mega Man 2, Wish You Were Here. Mega Man 3, The Wall, etc.
Yeah, the hardest part for this was finding a band with 6 albums that I'd listen to.
Yeah.
All right, you go with yours.
So mine is a band that probably not a lot of people have heard of, but they might be my all-time favorite band. One of them. I have a lot of all-time favorite bands, but Built to Spill, a West Coast 90s and early 2000s band. I highly suggest people listen to them if they never heard of them. But so 1 through 6, Nothing Wrong with Love, Keep It Like a Secret, Perfect From Now On. And I thought that was an ironic choice to put at Mega Man 3 because I really didn't care about Mega Man after that. And that's, the first 3 games were perfect. There Is No Enemy, Live, and You in Reverse. Do you have could you think of a band that would fit the Mega Man 1 through 6?
I did. I went with 9 Inch Nails because it's one of the only bands where I've listened to more than 6 albums. And can maybe speak intelligently about them. So like Mega Man 1, I put down their album called With Teeth. I know Mega Man's a debut game, but this was like the first 9 Inch Nails album after like a really long hiatus. And the sound of that album is like what you would associate with the modern 9 Inch Nails sound. Mega Man 2, I put Downward Spiral because everybody says it's their favorite, but some parts are much worse than you remember. Mega Man 3, I put Broken. So those both the album and the game have a similar story where the creator did not want to make it.
That's funny because that's my favorite 9 Inch Nails album.
Yeah, it was done basically to fulfill a record contract and be able to switch labels.
Nice.
Mega Man 4, put The Fragile because it's basically exactly what you'd expect without anything new. Mega Man 5, the Slip, which is again the same kind of basic formula, but toned down a little bit.
Never heard of that one.
Yeah. In Mega Man 6, I put the soundtrack to Pixar's Soul, because like, what is this and how did this happen? Applies to both of them.
Yeah.
Why is there a Mega Man 6? Why is there a 9 Inch Nails Pixar soundtrack? I have no clue what's going on anymore.
That's funny. Interesting question, Will. And Majors writes in, what is the draw for you to record this podcast? Is it an outlet to talk games with like-minded individuals in lieu of social media silliness? Or maybe it's a way to hone your editing skills? He put that one in for Zach and build a resume or portfolio up. Does your family and friend have any comments on your podcasting? So I'll let you answer that one first.
I mean, the part is I don't know a lot of people like in real life that are into retro games. That's part of it. Part is I don't like going out to meet people, so I guess it's certainly a factor. Not interested in improving any skills or gaining followers. And it's kind of the same thing. Like I read a lot of gaming articles in like hacking tools and demos, and it's all just about me like exploring things I find interesting, right? If someone else happens to be entertained by it, that's fine, whatever. But I don't wake up like, oh man, I want to write something that people are going to enjoy, because I honestly don't care. And that's kind of my same attitude here. Like I can talk about things that I think are interesting, and if other people like it, fine, and if you don't, whatever.
Yeah, yeah. It's similar for me where oh, and wait, do the second question. Your family or friends, do they have any comments on your podcasting? Do they know about it?
None of them. I don't. My father, like my father's definitely never played a video game, so he for sure does not listen. My mom likes like Facebook games and like Tetris kind of stuff, but she's not going to listen. So, and friends, yeah, I don't think any of them. Maybe one or two. I don't know. I don't really ask. Here's the thing: I don't really do like, self promotion is not something I enjoy.
Yeah, yeah. For me, it's kind of embarrassing. I used to do it a lot when I was in bands, but the second I got out of bands and people kept, because in bands you kind of promote to each other, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so when I got out of the music scene, but those people were still promoting to me, I kind of saw how I looked to other people who weren't in music, and I was like, oof. Yeah, people don't want that.
I feel like an Amway guy, kind of.
Yeah, but yeah, it's kind of the same. I just, as an excuse to talk about retro games, I don't have that many people to talk about it with, and yeah, I tell my family don't listen to it, because just because I'm podcasting doesn't mean you will find it interesting.
All right, thank you, Majors. Ken writes in, what game have you found since getting into retro games that you love the most but hadn't played or heard of much before? He's a big fan of discovering new games that he had never heard of. Mine
was two games that I chose, Rystar, or Restar, however you pronounce it, and Gunstar Heroes. Both games I really didn't play in the past, and they just blew me away playing them as Game Club games. California Games for the 2600. I own that game, and it has no excuse for being as good as it is. And and I hadn't played it in decades. And yeah, that's just nuts. And I'd also like to say, Hugh, one of your picks, Virtua Racer.
Oh yeah.
Just that game's so way more fun than it should be.
Yeah. You know what's funny is my first reaction to this question was also California Games in the 2600. But I thought like 2600 in general has been a big one for me, because I was I didn't television. I was kind of a Intellivision snob and didn't really think much of the 2600. And as I started getting into it, I found there's a lot of games that are really fun on it. Like Asteroids on 2600, I actually like better than the arcade version. California Games is by far the biggest surprise. Like if you haven't played the 2600 version of California Games, you are really, really missing out.
Yeah.
And then, like, Intellivision did not have as many Activision games as the 2600. So, like, 2600 Activision games were another big one for me. And then just, because of, like, college and work, between, like, 96 and 99, I played almost nothing. So, like, the Cruisin' series has been a big surprise for me. I know that's not an obscure, deep pick, but I first time I played a Cruisin' game was probably 2 years ago, right? So that's been a fun one to catch up on. And I'm planning, I was going to do it this year, but it's not really panning out, but I'm planning to try getting into the Commodore 64 next, just because outside of like Zork, I really haven't played too many Commodore games.
Same here. Yeah, absolutely. And I would love to do that too. It just seems hard to set them up, but I'm sure after you do it once, or you do them all at once, it's not too bad.
Yeah, well, I have one of these clone systems. You can just put an SD card in.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
Thank you for that email. And Trash Turkey writes in, thanking us for the podcast. His only problem with the past 100 episodes is he hasn't been able to play a lot of the Game Club games with us, and should he feel bad? And I'm going to say don't feel bad at all, because there are some times where we don't get a chance to really dive into them as much as we'd like to.
Right. And we probably pick a lot of stuff that isn't your thing. Like, I don't know what genre of games everyone's into, but you know, if we pick California games and you don't like California games, don't play it. I don't care.
Or the games that are really only available on archive.org, unless you're pirating them. Sometimes that's not the easiest to play.
Yeah. No, I try and pick multi-platform games whenever I can. So thank you, Trash Turkey. And Dale from France writes into us, and then Zach, again, doing a lot of work for us, mentions that we really need to promote this guy's work. So he has an itch.io page, Dale-Coop, so like Dale Cooper, but with a dash and minus the ER, .itch.io. And he does homebrew NES games. So again, that's Dale-Coop.itch.io. If you want to check out his homebrew games. And he asks us, what are your favorite NES homebrew games?
I'm so bad at this. So the only one I could come up with at the time was Doodle World because it was fantastic. And we talk about homebrew and hacks all the time on this. So really the only one I really remember recently loving that I played was Starlight Mario, that hack. But I really need to spend more time with homebrew. How about you?
Yeah, so I put down 5. Put down something called Full Quiet. You can Google all these, of course, which is maybe the best looking NES game I've ever seen. They demoed that at Midwest Gaming Classic, and it's hard to believe it's running on an NES. It is really, really nice looking. Doodle World, of course. I actually picked 5 different developers too, so none of these are even by the same company.
Nice.
Doodle World is really fun. Tailgate Party, which is maybe it's maybe not a thing for everybody, but it's a game that uses the power pad. So it's a beanbag toss game using the power pad. Log Jammers by Mega Cat Studios, kind of a short, small game, but it's a lot of fun. And then I might have talked on this podcast a homebrew game called What Remains. It's a sort of game set in the 80s. Some of the art style looks like the Stranger Things logo. It's a little bit. It might be. I didn't get it when I started playing it, but it's actually sort of like a political game. Like it's trying to send a message about like big corporations and climate change and stuff. So if you don't enjoy those themes, then you might not like the game. But it's it's like a sort of interactive fiction adventure game, and it looks really nice. Looks really good.
Nice. I'll have to play all those.
Yeah. So thank you for that. We're getting towards the end here. A couple more. Grand Emperor says he's doing the typical thing someone our age does, going back and listening and exploring music of his teen years and early 20s, which in his case is 90s alternative. He said he was a big fan of Garbage, Stone Temple Pilots, Soundgarden, and recently started getting into Jane's Addiction and Rage Against the Machine. And he was wondering what 90s bands we might still listen to. And if there's any that we listen to while gaming.
Not really while gaming, unless it's like, Tony Hawk or something where, you have a lot of 90s music in there already. But, Jane's Addiction was a huge influence on me in my songwriting. I think it's some of the best bass playing ever. But tons of 90s bands. Like I said from earlier, Built to Spill. They Might Be Giants, which I know is an 80s band too. Smashing Pumpkins, Hum, Neutral Milk Hotel, and Rancid are probably some of my favorite bands. And Hugh, I'm looking at your notes here, and a lot of those bands you're about to list as well.
Yeah. Mine's the most predictable list for someone my age and demographic, right? So in the 90s, I listened to a lot of Nine Inch Nails, which obviously came up already. Nirvana and Offspring, of course, I listened to a ton in that decade. But the second half, I listened to what at the time was called techno, and now I believe is called EDM. Somehow as a society decided to make that change. So like, Orbital, Chemical Brothers, BT, Prodigy, Crystal Method. I think I've been to all of those bands live when I was dating my wife. And the other factor was that I was in college then and was working also had a job as a programmer while in college. And like all those bands I named are just sort of better for coding music, for lack of a better term. But But the thing that he asked about music that reminds, music and gaming. Really, like, if there's one genre of music that reminds me of video games more than anything else, it's bad 1980s hair metal. Because it was just dominant in arcades, even into the early 90s. It was still, you would go in and it would be, Lay It Down by Rat or some other, not, I don't know why that's the first song that popped into my head, but there would be something like that blasting in the arcade.
Yeah.
And, MTV and radio in stations in the 1980s, like in 1980s over summer vacation, like 87, 88, 89, it was all just that music. So that I associate that with being in an arcade more than like any other band I've named.
Yeah, love the question. And Adam writes in, he has a crypto mining question. What do you guys think about using your GPU to mine crypto when it's not being used by anything else like playing games? And I used to do that, but it uses a lot of power. So I didn't like those bills really.
Yeah, I mean, I because I work for a tech company and I know a lot of cryptocurrency people. It has all the markings of like a get rich quick scam. It really does. It seems super scammy to me. And it does use an incredible amount of power. Like while we're recording this, like it's 98 degrees and there's like a category 5 hurricane coming, right? Like we don't need to make things worse by just burning more energy to make fake money.
But on the flip side, the site where I contribute a little bit and download most my retro ROMs, mostly MAME, you can actually get ratio points, for sharing. If you dedicate your GPU to, I think it's protein folding or something to do with cancer research. So I thought that was pretty cool. That's a good use of GPU.
Yeah. But the other thing that I think is lost is the whole concept of like Bitcoin is that this is a new currency that can only be acquired by people who already have a lot of money. Mm-hmm. Right? Like the crypto people getting crypto coins are people who can afford lots of GPUs. Right? Mm-hmm. So I don't really think that's a practical way to, if the only way to get money is to already have lots of money, you're not really building a good system. So I am not a fan of cryptocurrency, and I think it's a scam.
I think cryptocurrency will be big one day, but I don't think the coin that will actually make it has been invented or discovered yet. And then he also asked, what do you think about ray tracing in older games like Quake 2 or Super Mario 64? And I'm just going to go ahead and answer that to say I adore it.
Okay.
What do you think about those kind of upgrades?
Overall, I like it. I think, like, I said I think we can have both. You know what I mean? Like, yeah, we can have upscaled and remade versions of games, and we can have the original, and you can play whichever one you like better. Generally, I like it. There's a lot of games. I mean, I just probably talk about in the next episode too, but I'm looking forward to the Quake remakes. I guess it's not really remake. I don't know if they're upgraded or not. But if there was like a upgraded ray traced remake of any old game that I liked a lot, I'd be for it.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Absolutely, yeah. Cool. Thank you for that question. I like the unique questions. I like all the questions. Want to take the next one?
Yeah, last one was Adam. Thank you again. And Stanley. He has a question directly for me here. There's a couple. Did you have the slightest idea how bad Street Fighter the movie would be when you were there for video capture? And would you mind sharing literally anything you can remember about the experience? So I don't know. I wrote an article about it, and I don't know that if I have much more to say. Like, when we did the motion capture, I really didn't know about what the game would be like. I mean, I knew they were using the actors and stunt doubles, and it sounded more like Mortal Kombat than Street Fighter. The company that did it had previously made a game called Bloodstorm, which I believe its claim to fame was being mentioned in The Simpsons. And, it was a Chicago company, but Bloodstorm was even kind of obscure in Chicago. But I played it. It was, a fun fighting game. So that's kind of what I thought it would be like. We were invited back to do like play testing, to try the arcade game out and give them some feedback. And, you know, it was clearly not on par with like Street Fighter 2 or Mortal Kombat 2, but I really didn't think it was bad. Like, bad was not the description that came to mind for me. Like, probably not going to move people away from Street Fighter or Mortal Kombat, though. And at the developer, they also had a PlayStation 1, and I don't remember if it was a dev kit or just a Japanese import, but the system was not out in the US yet. And we also tried Battle Arena Toshinden there, and I immediately thought, like, okay, this is going to be a better game. Like, my first impression was like, okay, like this style of game, but you know, the 3D fighter is probably the next big thing, and releasing a new 2D game is probably not going to work. The only developer I really talked to was Alan, who was the, you know, designer, and again, this because I was friends with his brother, right? Who was also in the game, and you know, I just sort of remember him coming back from Australia with like a pile of Polaroids of photos from the cast. I don't think I talked to any of the developers very much, except, you know, this was kind of this period of time when you're in your 20s and you're hanging out with people and going to bars a lot. So if at some point I was at a bar with like the Street Fighter devs because we were in the same area and we had the same circle of friends, yeah, I guess that could have happened. I don't really remember it though.
Yeah.
I don't have a lot to add, unfortunately. And then Stanley also mentions that he works at a hospital and thinks our podcast and also like Retro Hour and 2600 Game by Game podcasts have really helped him deal with the extended pandemic issues. You know, not being able to meet with friends and just talk about games has been very tough for him. And he just writes to say thank you for giving him you know, giving him time to hear people talk about video games again.
Yeah, thanks for sharing that with us, and thanks for continuing to be at a hospital. I know it's getting bad again, and it's got to be draining to say the least.
Oh yeah. I mean, you probably thought we were almost over, and then here we are, worse than before. It's awful.
Yeah, and so, but yeah, thanks. You know, it emails and comments like that really help motivate us to keep it going. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I'm the opposite. Like my podcast backlog is probably like 60 episodes now because I mostly listen while commuting to work. So I gotta do some yard work or some project where I have headphones on for a couple hours. All right, thank you for that. Thank you very much, Stanley. Joe says, I would like to know if you could build your own ideal arcade, what would be in it?
So I already kind of have a small one in my basement, even though it's been pared down. But and by the way, I love this question just because I love talking about arcade cabinets. You know, I already mentioned 720 and Sunrunner are two that I don't have. I do have Tron, Star Wars arcade. Star Wars 83. I used to have a Cloak and Dagger, which would definitely be in there. Donkey Kong, Street Fighter 2, Millipede, and one I would really love now, even still, is the Star Wars arcade from the 90s. I don't think it was 2000s. I thought it was 90s. But yeah, how about you?
You know, I would do a theme. Like, I would probably try to build, if I just, you know, this is like a you won the lottery kind of question, I guess. I would try to build an arcade that like copied a specific era, like summer 1983. So like, you know, up front you'd have like Dragon's Lair and Spy Hunter and Pole Position, the kind of like the new games. And then assortment of like 1 to 2 year old games like Miss Pac-Man, Frogger, Burger Time, like that kind of, you know, stuff that you would actually see in a 1983 arcade. And then like weighing back, you know, some older games that maybe have visible wear. You know, asteroids, that kind of stuff. But yeah, I would really like to have like a pure like aesthetic from just like one era. Obviously, I would miss a lot of games. That's why I said like doing like a 1994 build would be really good too, because there you get a lot of arcade games, and those are probably easier to get. But yeah, I would not do like just here's a random assortment of games. I would probably be like, I'm going to recreate a specific time period. You know, posters, snack bar, whatever. I guess finding snacks from 1983 is probably a bad idea, but you get the point.
You know, that actually would be a cool project in Unreal Engine or something, like create arcades from specific years. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I mean, you can do it like if you ever downloaded the Arcade Ambience albums.
Yeah, yeah.
Like that's what they're going for. Yeah.
So, Joe, thank you for that email. And Jonathan, we mentioned that this is kind of a repeat from an earlier email, but, a little bit specific to what retro console would you like to develop for and why. And, to elaborate in mine, well, not elaborate, but to answer it differently, the NES all the way, because I was a young kid who, just dreamt about being a video game programmer. And also the Dreamcast, I would love to port over like the PC X-Wing and TIE Fighter series to it. I always thought that would be cool.
Yeah, that's a takedown letter, but yeah, it'd be cool. Dreamcast is maybe the most feasible system to go learn to program for, right? Because you can download like Windows CE builds for Dreamcast. So if you can write something that runs on Windows CE, you can get it to boot in Dreamcast. I know there's all kinds of like legal issues I'm probably accidentally raising here. Microsoft might have a problem with it, but if you can program for Windows, you can program for Dreamcast. It seems, you're not going to run into hardware limitations very easily.
And you don't need a GD-ROM writer. You could just use CD.
Yeah, that's true. You can just play a regular CD on it. Yeah, it's definitely a very, very feasible system to write for.
And so that brings us to the end of all the emails. And so, we have a giveaway this episode, and I picked the raffle winners before this episode. Don't worry, there are actually, luckily, no more questions after I picked the winners. And I did it this way because I wanted to give the winners a chance to say, you know what, I actually don't want a prize. I didn't realize there was a prize. Just give it to, redraw, please, But both winners were very happy and excited. And the way I picked them was we're using a Google Sheet right now. So I just picked, the row numbers from the questions and put it into Google's random number generator. And here are the two numbers. So for the AVS NES FPGA emulator thing, is the Grand Emperor. Congrats. And for Zach's PC Classic Mini thing is Stanley. Also, congrats.
Yeah, and thank you again. Thank you, everybody who wrote. I really enjoyed all these questions.
Yeah, and please, for episode 101 and above, please feel free to ask us anything. And please feel free, to obviously always email us, email@retrogameclub.net. Any retro projects, questions, recommendations, we just love hearing from you no matter what. Virtual high five to Zach for maintaining the social media. So that's at RGC Podcast for Twitter. And what's our Facebook page? It's facebook.retrogameclub.net.
I don't know. I would just tell you to go to that Linktree thing.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
Everything. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Instagram, whatever else he comes up with. And OnlyFriends, I think, is one.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so, so I think that wraps up episode 100. I look forward to our next episodes talking about our Game Club games again.
Yeah, we got a lot of good stuff in the notes already. All right, everybody, thanks for listening.
Yeah, thank you.